Okay, so it's really nice to see some familiar names. Several of you are already part of the Uni Studies program, so I'm really excited that you're joining our first webinar. This is Uni Studies' first webinar of what will be a quarterly series, so we're hoping to host these 4 times a year. For those of you who are not familiar with Uni Studies, we are the pioneering program under Best Buddies' newest pillar, family support. Uni Studies pairs experienced parents of children or caregivers with IDD with new parents who are expecting, have just welcomed a baby, or are raising a child up to the age of 8 who has recently been diagnosed with an IDD. This pairing is a mentor to mentee connection. It's meant to really bloom into a friendship. Whether it's through one-to-one mentorship, webinars like this, support groups, resources, the goal of Uni Studies is simple. It's really to help parents feel more confident, informed, and connected as they're raising their amazing children. If you're interested in joining Uni Studies, we are going to put our landing page in the chat. You can click directly on that landing page and you can sign up to be a mentor or a mentee. And we'd love to have you be part of our Uni Studies family. All right, so the topic of tonight is navigating support systems for parents and caregivers of children with IDD. We have 2 amazing panelists who I've had the pleasure of meeting and working with the past couple of weeks, and really Kelly the past couple of months. So Kelly Coleman is an author, advocate, speaker, and mom whose book, Everything No One Tells You About Parenting a Disabled Child, Your Guide to the Essential Systems, Services, and Supports, gives parents the tools to spend less time with the stuff and more time loving their kids exactly as they are. You can find Kelly's book on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and pretty much anywhere you can buy a book. We are going to put Kelly's website in the chat so that you can access it, as well as her social media handle. Kelly's friend and co-panelist today is Jessica Pate. Jessica is mother to a 21-year-old son with Prader-Willi syndrome, which is a rare genetic disorder. He also has autism. Jessica founded the We Are Brave Together podcast in 2017. And We Are Brave Together. It's an international community and includes almost 3,000 moms in 50 states and 27 countries. Jessica is passionate about encouraging and serving caregiving moms everywhere, and she wishes she can look every mom in the eyes and tell her you're not alone. Okay, so Jessica also has a book, which you can find on Amazon. It's Becoming Brave Together, Heroic Extraordinary Caregiving Stories from Mothers Hidden in Plain Sight. I think her and Kelly's books really complement each other. Kelly's is really great when you're starting out on your journey, and it's the nuts and bolts, and Jessica's is just beautiful personal stories and community building. So thank you both for being here. All right, so we're gonna kind of kick off the discussion. So Kelly and Jessica, both of you have worked really hard to create spaces where parents can feel seen and supported. What advice do you have for parents who are struggling to find their own village?
Kelly, do you want to go first or shall I go first?
You go first.
Well, one, I would say that, of course, you're struggling because it is a lot to be a parent and a caregiver and work and advocate and go to appointments and go to therapies. And if you have a partner and now you have other kids and friends and all of it, it's exhausting. It's too much all the time. So I would say that, first of all, you deserve community, and it is critical to your mental, emotional, and physical health. And this journey feels very lonely and you feel like you're alone. But there are so many parents who are out there ready to support you and walk alongside you. And we're here to tell you how and why and talk all about it.
And to build onto that, however you are feeling at that moment, validate that and allow that to be without any shame, So many people tell us, oh, well, at least dot, 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 or oh, cheer up this, like, nah. How about just, I'm here for you? And you can start with being there for yourself and connecting when and how is most comfortable for you, whether it's online, whether it's in person, combination. The sooner that you do, the sooner that all of this gets easier. It won't ever be easy, maybe. Some days might be, some might not. But connecting with others really is everything and is worth the effort.
So kind of piggybacking off that question, what do you say to a parent or caregiver who feels like they don't have the time, energy, or emotional capacity to connect with a community?
Well, I would say, ask yourself this. If I did have more time, if I did have the emotional capacity, if I did have a little bit more energy, would I actually seek it out? Because I think that's very telling. I think from just hearing, hundreds of stories through the years of Leading We Are Brave and having our podcast and talking to so many moms, that there's fear about being in community with other people in similar circumstances because we think that it will push our grief buttons and we're going to go down a rabbit hole of sadness forever. And I think that's real, and I want to validate that fear. I think also I've seen, and there's research and science behind it, that when we do feel our feelings, we're closer to accessing joy and happiness than if we stuff it down and hide away from the community. So I would say too that you have to believe that community is essential for your own mental health and well-being. And if you are better off as the caregiver or primary caregiver, then your family is better off. So it is not selfish to carve out a little bit of time for yourself to join an online group or join a physical in-person group, gathering, retreat, support group, whatever the offering is. It really is to your benefit.
And adding to that, you're right, you probably don't have time and energy. And we get that. We get that deeply. What most people and myself on this journey also didn't realize in those stages when you're focused on all of the tasks of caregiving and the day to day is that you probably need the community more than you realize. And there will be people who can answer how to get your insurance company to cover diapers. There will also be people who will sit there and listen. And it is something that you're not sure what you'll get out of it going into it, but guaranteed it will change that day to day time and energy for the better.
Thank you. That was awesome advice from the both of you. Jessica, this one is for you. You often emphasize the message, you are not alone. What are some tangible ways caregivers can remind themselves of this truth, especially in the moments where they're feeling most isolated?
I think just making sure that you are connecting on a regular basis with other caregivers who understand it. One of our mantras in We Are Brave is that girlfriends who get you are sacred and mandatory. And so if we have people that we're actually speaking with, FaceTiming with, sending videos back and forth, because I believe it's really important to see each other's faces and hear each other's voices, whether that's, being a part of an online group or an in-person group, or it's just one or two people that you've met in your school district, at the therapy office, or whatever way you connect with a few fellow parent caregivers, reach out, because we will always feel like we're alone because we're the ones doing our caretaking alone, even if you do have a partner. And so we have to remind ourselves and reach out and tell others to reach out to us.
Awesome. Thank you. And Kelly, many parents get caught up in managing systems, appointments, and advocacy, a lot of what your book talks about, often at the expense of their own well-being. How can parents create space for joy and connection with their child amid all their responsibilities?
So the thing that I always talk to parents about is we need to start with recognizing that caregiving is a job. Caregiving is a job in addition to and on top of parenting. I get to be a parent. I am also a caregiver. And for me, that involves today I was sorting through summaries of plan benefits for two different insurance plans. Lots of fun there. All of those tasks, they're not going to go away. And the key is crossing things off when you can, but looking at it as a job and how can you make this life sustainable? Because if that is all you're doing and you are not building in time to enjoy yourself and your friends, and especially your kids and your family, that is when things start to feel like too much and feel like a burden. And if you can say, this is my job, and just like any other job, I'm going to leave these things on the desk. I know these phone calls need to be made. This IEP document needs to be read. Schedule times for things so that you can also schedule time to just enjoy your family and to take your kids out for ice cream, because that is why we became parents in the first place. And even I have a kiddo who has an undiagnosed genetic syndrome, and within that, cerebral palsy, autism, epilepsy, cortical vision impairment, feeding tube. Like he's an overachiever. He just checks all the boxes. And it is always a lot. It always will be a lot. And prioritizing time to enjoy him and this amazing, dazzling human that he is what gives meaning to all the really boring stuff. And we got to find a way to make it sustainable and give it meaning.
So thank you. As part of the registration for this webinar, I asked, the group what specific topics they'd like to address. And, we kind of pulled out a few of those that I'd like to talk about. One of them is, how can I effectively communicate my child's needs to family and friends who may not understand IDD?
You want to go first, Kelly?
Sure.
Okay.
Wouldn't it be nice if everyone got it? Oh my goodness. Some of our greatest stresses are like, why don't you understand? This is just a kid who wants to give you a hug. Like, start there. So know that it is frustrating, but pretty normal when the people around you, your family and friends, don't always understand. And it can be exhausting feeling like you have to teach the world about disability. But you do. And that's because we all have all of this bias and ignorance and all these things, myself included, that like I have this kid that I'm realizing, oh, I got to unpack that. So start with modeling, just treating your child like a person. Be objective when you are sharing the news. Hey, my kid has this genetic syndrome. Here's what it's called. It's not a tragedy. He's not suddenly an inspiration. That's just part of his journey. Let's go have dinner. Try to make it as objective as possible. And something I say that you can model that can be game changing is not apologizing for your child when they're not doing anything wrong. For years, I realized one day, I was standing at the grocery store, we spend a lot of time there. He is loud and proud and squeals and joy and clapping and makes himself known. And I realized I was apologizing for all of the ways that he's expressing his joy out in public But there's not anything wrong with cheering for the hummus at the grocery store. He just likes the lighting situation. And we get the looks, all the things that, he is visibly, you can tell he is disabled. And it took some effort. And I shifted instead of, oh, I'm so sorry, to, you know
Mm-hmm.
what? He likes to party by the hummus. How cool is that? Thank you for understanding. You know what? He is blocking the whole aisle at Costco because he really needed to dance right now. Thank you for understanding. Do you want to dance? And replacing I'm sorry with thank you for understanding shifts the dynamic because you're not the victim to be pitied anymore, and your child is
Mm-hmm.
not to be pitied. You are welcoming them in and saying, this is how my child experiences the world. Welcome to our world. And you'd have to be a real jerk to be like, I do not understand your child applauding in the grocery store. Like, nobody's going to say that.
That's so good, Kelly. I love that. I absolutely love that. That's such a powerful reframe for us, and we don't want to get stuck playing the victim at all because it doesn't do us any good. What I would add to that is just don't be afraid to say what you need to friends and family. Um, for example, we traveled as a family for the first time in December to see my nieces in Colorado. We have not traveled as a family, all five of us, for probably 7 years because it was just too difficult with Ryan. And we got brave enough and we said, let's try this. The siblings were on board because it's very hard on the siblings. And we all tried it. What was so beautiful about this experience was that my nieces asked me ahead of time, what does Ryan need? And I just said, this is the day in the life of Ryan. This is how it will go when we travel. This is how it will go when we land. This is what a day looks like. I'll bring my lock with me for the kitchen. I can explain that later. I just was very specific about what it was going to look like and what he would need. And I wasn't afraid to say, we might have to leave early. Maybe I'll leave the rest of the family. I don't know if he's going to have a meltdown. I don't know how it's going to go. But, we just had an open conversation. So I would say just share about your child and what he needs. And like what Kelly said, you don't have to apologize for what he or she needs in any particular setting. Did I answer that? I feel like there was part of that question that I missed, though, Nisi.
No, I think that you both answered it great. And you both reminded me this morning I had a mentor training. And one thing that came up constantly is first saying what you need and don't be afraid to ask for help. And so really, Jessica, a lot of what you're saying, I feel like came out this morning in the mentor training. So for me, it was kind of like full circle listening to you. And Kelly, I just want to say, I know in your book, you have a template on how to share the news with family and friends. And I actually use your template. It's one of my resources for our mentors because I think it's so great. So yes, if you get it, if you're a mentor and you do have that resource, or if you get a chance to look at Kelly's book, her templates are fantastic. And that reminded me of your template.
Thank you.
Also, I want to.
With my friend who created that, the template for sharing the news with family and friends is based on an email that a friend who found out prenatally that her child would be born with Down syndrome, and really applies to whatever stage and what you are sharing with people. And I want to underline what Jessica said about telling people in advance what you need. Hey, I'm going to share some information with you, and here's how I need you to react. I need you to be supportive. I need you to be there for me. I need you to not pity me. Here's some news. Because when you tell people how to react, then they're relieved and are able to hopefully follow.
I want to add to that too, that everyone throughout your life are going to say the wrong things, and we just have to give people grace. I definitely was bitter and very sensitive to all the wrong things in Ryan's first 5 years, 7 years probably. And I quickly just had, well, of course they're going to say the wrong thing because they're not in my circumstance, and people mean well, and some people are ignorant. But it only hurts us, honestly, in our own mental health when we stew and brew and get really bitter about the people who say the wrong things, or say the cliches and the platitudes and all that. People are going to say that. And so we can say to ourselves, wow, well, I really did not like hearing what she or he had to say to me. And that really doesn't feel good and land very well. But they also don't have a child with a disability. So I'm just going to let that go. And I'm just going to let it roll off, because otherwise it just really, really impacts us greatly. The other thing I wanted to share on Instagram yesterday, there's a carousel post that we shared about how to navigate getting together with friends or family. And that was all born out of my experience this last December with traveling to see my nieces. And I thought, anyway, so there's some practical tips in there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yes, you for sure both answered that question, and thank you. I think that that addition definitely covered the friends part. So here's a sibling question. And I know you both have multiple children. So how can I support siblings of children with IDD in feeling included and valued in our family dynamic?
I have so much to say. I could talk for an hour. I'm so passionate about the siblings. I think it's really important to tell the siblings, you have a voice in this family and your voice matters. Your needs, your hurts, your thoughts, your dreams, your stressors matter, and I want to hear it. I know that I'm over here because, Ryan and our family, Ryan takes up a lot of time and energy and attention, but I see you and your voice matters, and I'm here for it. I'm here to listen. I'm here for you. You're allowed to have needs. You're allowed to have thoughts and feelings. You're allowed to tell me things that you think might stress me out, actually. I can handle it. I'm here for you.
Yes, that things that might stress you out, and also things that they might be afraid to say. Maybe they don't like their sibling that day. Maybe they don't like all of the therapists coming in and out of your house, or all the doctor's visits, or times when mom or dad has to be away. You want them to communicate with you always. So if you have a non-disabled child and a disabled child, and your non-disabled child comes up to you and says, I hate my sibling, if you say, don't say that, that's not okay, they will never tell you how they're feeling, because they know you will shut that down.
Mm-hmm.
What you can do either in that moment, or if there's like exorcist vomit going all over the place, like is usually the case at our house in times of stress, say, let's talk as soon as we put out these fires, but I want to talk, and say, hey, tell me more. And the phrase tell me more can be so powerful, because I am not throwing my feelings onto my child. I'm saying, like Jessica said, I see you, I recognize you. Tell me more. Tell me about what you are feeling. Tell me about what you love, what you hate, all the things. And the more that we can engage all of our children and not have them feel like my sibling is my job, and I have
Right.
to have this job of being my sibling's keeper. But the more that we model the positives of caregiving, we don't have to act like it's all perfect and easy, because that's also not real. But model and allow your siblings to form the relationship that they will naturally form. You can foster that, but you can't force it.
Mm.
I love
Also,
that.
I would just say too that when the siblings are having their feelings and you feel you're sort of this, maybe this was just me and this is what I learned along the way, but I was feeling defensive because I was because they feel that I must not be doing my job as a mom. And that's just not true. They're just having those feelings because the feelings are real and they're valid, and it has nothing to do with me. And so I really had to learn to listen and say, tell me more. Be curious, not pounce on them for, it's not fair that blah, 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 fill in the blank, right? It's not. It's not fair.
Yeah, I love that. And I love Tell Me More. I think you can use that in really any situation, even in our program when you're talking to your mentees, share more. I just think that that's really, really good advice. Okay, so what are some creative ways to build a support network when local resources are scarce? And we got this because we do have a few people who registered who are kind of in areas where there's not a ton of other parents who have children with IDD.
We are Brave Together. We'd love to help you out. We've got members in all 50 states and 26 countries outside the US, so we would be happy to connect you. We have some leaders who lead connection circles, our support groups. They're in rural areas, and so it's a virtual offering because it just doesn't make sense to do an in-person connection circle where they live because people won't come. People are just spread apart. I would definitely look in Facebook groups. Diagnosis specific, parent groups for your state, school district. I would ask doctors, therapists, specialists, any professional that's part of your medical team, clinical team, psychological team to connect you with other parents. I know they can't just like hand you a list of their patients, but they can ask another parent, may I connect you with this other parent? They're looking for community. And most of the time, they will say yes. They are happy to help.
And
Kelly.
I recently was speaking at a conference in Kentucky, and a lot of parents were there from remote rural areas saying, I drove 2 hours to get to this small town in Kentucky. I don't have a support network. And we talked a lot about all the things Jessica said. We are brave together. I will shout from the hilltops every chance I get, because there are opportunities to connect, even if they are virtually. If you need to get creative, my son, for example, his genetic syndrome is at age 11, not diagnosed. We've done every test available. And so he has many subdiagnoses, but we don't really have a community. And I have learned it's okay to reach out to a community from another diagnosis. We found so much support and community through the Down syndrome community locally and nationally, but especially locally. We're certain that's one of the diagnoses that our son does not have. But everything else seems to be a question mark. And the Down syndrome community said, come here, come on, welcome. So don't be afraid to reach out to other communities. When I very first, at the very beginning of our journey, started down this journey, we knew that our son had cortical vision impairment. I Googled blind children Los Angeles, and I made a phone call to the first organization that pulled up, and they transferred me to Diana, and Diana started connecting me with people. So don't be afraid to make a phone call or send an email, even outside of your area or outside of your diagnosis, because there are people who absolutely want to walk this path with you.
So good, Kelly.
And then, and this is the last question I'm gonna pose, and then I'm gonna kind of let everybody either, post questions in the chat, or if you want, you can unmute yourselves. But can you give us some tips and mantras to not compare journeys with other parents, whether they have children with IDD or not?
Okay, so I'll jump in, Kelly. I saw you pause. Within We Are Brave, we say, let us share and not compare. And we're talking about within the disability medically complex, parent, caregiver, community. Every mother counts, every child counts, every diagnosis counts. Wherever you are on the caretaking spectrum, it matters. And that is one of our huge philosophies. It's how we train our leaders. It's what we tell our retreat speakers. It's something we say all the time. Now, I know that if you are not a caretaker alongside being a parent, and your kids are all neurotypical with not a single other diagnosis or struggle behaviorally, psychologically, medically, we can say to ourselves within this community, gosh, that looks easy. that looks easier than my life. And there are days that I feel jealous and envious of that. Let's just be real. Call a spade a spade. And this is after doing therapy, everyone. This is after doing my own internal work, whether it was with a coach or a therapist. I got to the place of everyone's hard is their hard. And I could be really cynical when, my sister-in-law is saying that, her kids are doing 5 or 10 APs and they're up till midnight and she feels sorry for them. And I'm like, gosh, I'm just trying to keep my kids alive. But okay, I could get really cynical and then I just stop and say, that is her hard. That is her child's hard, and let it go. I think it goes back to our own grief. We are living a life that we did not expect. And that if we could push the easy button, we would, and we would dial back that diagnosis. We don't want our kids to have any medical or psychological, genetic, intellectual struggles at all, because that is the heart of a parent. So I think it just kind of goes back to doing our own internal work so that we don't get bitter about other people's seemingly easy or easier lives, and have so much compassion on yourself. It's understandable that I feel jealous. It's understandable that I'm envious. It's understandable that I'm mad at my friend for complaining about such and such when my life is so much harder. Just like gobs and gobs of self-compassion.
And I think a lot of that self-compassion comes when you say these things out loud. It's not, I should never feel this way and beat yourself up for feeling like you're comparing these kids at the park that aren't your kids. Try to recognize and name those feelings and vent those in a support group, to your partner, to a friend, to the random checker at the grocery store. I've done that before. They're a little freaked out, but they're like, "Whoa, you want some extra strawberries?" Yes, I want extra strawberries. Or even write it down in a journal. Get those thoughts out of your own head and accept that that is going to come and go. Exactly what Jessica said. Everyone has their hard. Some of us wear our heart on our sleeve. Hard doesn't mean bad. It's real hard running a marathon. I hear that's not bad. But name and talk about what is hard, because that makes it so much less scary. You will do those comparisons in your head, and it will just beat you up if you do not get that out and say it out loud. Write it down, some way to get that out of your own head.
Very true. Very true. I'm gonna give people time if they have questions and they want to write them in the chat. If you want to raise your hand, and then we can address your question. Does anybody have any questions for Kelly and Jessica? Well, a few minutes. Oh, Cecilia does.
Well, first of all, I would just want to thank you for everything you've shared today as a parent of a child with Down syndrome and the leader of this program. I've learned so much from your insight and your journeys. And so thank you so much. I've been jotting down tons of notes to implement for our program. One question I had going back to the self-care is, I was wondering if you guys could share what you guys, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. How you implement that in your lives? Is it something that you intentionally put down in your calendars on a daily basis, on a weekly basis? How do you manage that? And what does self-care look like for you?
Kelly, you go first.
Oh, I could talk about this one all day. When I first started this journey, I had so many people saying, "I'm so worried about you. You should take a yoga class." And I just wanted to scream, because I'm like, the last thing I want to do is be in a room with mirrors and a bunch of bendy 20 somethings who are going off to brunch after this, and I would just cry and feel worse. An idea of self-care that maybe you once had or that other people had for you might not be the right thing. I once had a therapist tell me, and Jessica are very pro therapy and always for you. A therapist once told me, right now, your to-do list is your yoga. And boy, that's boring. But some days, that's what you need to feel good, is to check the stuff off the list that's hanging over your head so that you can make space for the other things, for fun and for joy and for all of this stuff. For me, self-care looks like making all of the boring stuff sustainable and scheduling that to the extent that I can so that I am able to put that away and do the fun things and the time with the kids. I absolutely put time on my calendar for fun things, for exercise, for writing or seeing friends. And in different seasons and months and years and weeks and days, that can look very, very different. We have medical challenges in our house, so sometimes nothing happens for a long time for me because I'm all hands on deck on seizure control. Other times there's a lot more space for that. I always know what I can go back to that is easy for me to jump into and access, that will be totally comfortable. Maybe if I haven't been to the gym in a year, I'm not comfortable going back into the gym, so that's causing me stress. But you know what? I can take a long walk with the dog. I'm not ready to go to a party, but can I meet a friend for coffee? And I always know those small things that I can always go back to that are easy and accessible and comfortable, because sometimes I have to reinvent the wheel all over again. And then when I can do those bigger things, great, do the bigger things, but always know what you can come back to.
That's so good. That's so good, Kelly. Um, First of all, I would just say that you have to believe that you are worthy of investing in your own mental health, because the obstacles will always, forever and ever, amen, be there. And it would be easy just to say, I've got all these obstacles. I can't even think about myself. But if you go down, then the whole family minivan crashes, right? So we must take care of ourselves in some ways. And it can be bite-sized. It can be 10 minutes outside in the sun, writing in a journal, or reading if reading lights you up. So I think what was powerful for me to discover along the way is the difference between self-comfort and true self-care. Self-comfort are things like, I don't know, dark chocolate, Netflix, getting your nails done, a massage. Well, I mean, a massage I think can be more therapeutic, I guess. But anyways, there are things that are self-comfort that only relieve you or help you in the moment that you're doing those things. And then once you leave that nail salon or whatever, it's gone, poof. True self-care is really investing in practices that light you up, that help you access play, that bring you joy, happiness, that bring you peace, grounding, gratitude. And it might sound exhausting to even figure out what the heck that is, because you're so tired and you've put your needs so far down deep into the sand, you don't even know what you like or who you are. But you can always return to yourself and say, oh, I used to like baking all the time. Like I loved baking, or I loved cooking, or I loved crocheting, or I loved, I don't know, whatever, rock climbing, just whatever it is, like something that lit you up way, way, way back when you were not so focused on caretaking. And it's okay to think about those things and to carve out some time for yourself without guilt, without guilt, without guilt.
I love that, self-comfort, self-care. I haven't heard that before. Definitely.
Sorry, I'm just loving this conversation so much. And I loved what you said about demystifying other people's ideas, and just kind of listening to, just going, letting them guide us as well. And a question I had for our panelists was, how do you land in that place where you feel that you're doing enough or that you've done enough? Because I often find that many families, and I will include myself in that, just we like give it our all and just find the best therapist and finally, we just find all the resources. But there comes a point where there might be burnout or where you need to recognize that this is enough, whatever, like just the little things that you can do might be enough. But I wanted to hear from you guys on that perspective.
I'm going to jump in on this one. I think there is never an end to the stuff that we could be doing.
Mm-hmm.
I could make a list of 2,000 things I would like to do or try or learn or work on in service of best supporting my son and the amazing human that he is. There will always be more. Your challenge is not to say, I've done 2,000 things. Your
Mm-hmm.
challenge is to say, I have done the best that I can in any given moment with the information, situation, support, money, insurance, school, whatever that I have. And that is where the peace comes, is not when you go to bed saying, did I do enough? Because you will always come up with an answer for why you didn't do enough. That's not the right question. The right question is, did I do the best that I could with what I had? And it is very rare when you'll be like, you know what? I think I could have done better today. If you are being honest with yourself, you will go to bed and say, you know what? We all wore pants today, and maybe the dog too. And that is all I had the capacity for. And that is everything. Other days you
Mm-hmm.
will move mountains, and that's what you can do that day. But ask yourself the right questions so that you are not giving yourself anxiety that you don't need.
I agree. I agree. I think we also have to ask ourselves, am I trying to fix, heal, or normalize my child? Because when we are in that mindset, we're going to do 1,000 therapies, 1,000 interventions, 1,000 private therapies, we'll be mad at the IEP team all the time because everything that goes wrong is taken away from fixing, normalizing, or healing my child. And so I think we have to be really honest with ourselves if that's where we're coming from, and that's why we're doing. At some point, we recognized that Ryan was not going to get his high school diploma, probably by third or fourth grade. Now, could I have hired a million tutors and therapists to fight against that truth? I could have, but I probably would have made Ryan miserable and myself miserable. We have to radically accept where our child falls on the spectrum of their diagnosis. And I'm not saying throw the parent card out and say la vie, I'm not saying that, but I just think we're doing ourselves a disservice when we don't accept where our child is. Yes, we push for progress, growth, hitting certain milestones, but that's not what it's all about. We have to enjoy our child. Our child teaches us way more than we teach them. And so I think if we shift our mindset, that will help us not hit burnout slightly, and it will guide us in how we spend our time. And I just think it's very critical that we're kind, back to self-compassion and kindness to ourselves, because like Kelly said, we're doing the best that we can at the time, every day.
And I'd also like to add to that, There was a study from the National Institutes of Health not too long ago of parents of kids with intellectual disabilities. And the findings were that 66% of dads and 94% of moms experience depression and or anxiety. When I read that, I thought that sounds low. Like who are these like 6% of unicorn moms who are like, no, I'm not anxious. I totally got this always. Like, what? I'm be so excited to meet those people and like what's their secret. Know that you can expect to feel that way. So there is no shame in any of that. Seek help, seek community, seek groups. If you're not ready for any of that, then reach out to your local free podcast. Jessica's podcast, for example, Brave Together Parenting. You can go on a walk or drive in your car and just listen. And if that's what you need in order to connect, to find your footing, it is there. It is available to everyone. It is free.
Thanks, Kelly.
And it's
Thank you
good
both.
and it's fun. It has great coffee.
I'm going to end with the last question, and it's for the both of you. What is one thing that each of you wants kind of everybody on this webinar, their one kind of takeaway from this discussion? If you can pinpoint kind of just one overall takeaway.
Community is the only way through, and you're not meant to do this alone. And if the pandemic taught us anything, it's that we're not meant to live, love, learn, work, or caretake alone. And there are plenty of people that we can help connect you to. You're connected here to each other. We will help you. Community is everything.
And I will add to that, as soon as you can connect with community, does not have to be the same diagnosis, then this journey becomes easier, more meaningful, and it can even be fun. We were talking about seizures earlier. They're the worst, they're terrible, all the things. But when you connect with other people who have a similar experience, who have a caregiving experience, it changes your experience, because there is so much meaning, because there are people who will give to you, and wherever you are, you have so much to give to this community.
Thank you. Thank you both. And, I want to thank you for taking time the past couple of months to talk to me, to sit with us for this hour, to offer your insight, experiences. You both have just been so fantastic. We put in the chat, Uni Studies is, obviously a huge support for all of you and what we're talking about in this group. Again, we put the landing page. If you're interested in being a mentor or mentee, we offer in-person in 4 cities, but we also offer virtual pairings throughout the entire US. Kelly's book, it's fantastic. Her website's fantastic. She's also done many podcasts, including Jessica's, and Jessica's community is fantastic too. So these are 3 great resources for all of you that are on this call. So stay tuned for our next webinar to be announced very soon, and our panelists as well. Kelly's book is also free at many public libraries. She just dropped that in. We love free. So stay tuned. We will communicate either via the Uni Studies newsletter. And also something really exciting is Uni Studies just launched our own social media account. I think I see Cecilia writing it into the chat right now. So if you follow Best Buddies, even if you don't, if you want to follow along the Uni Studies journey and family, we encourage you to follow us on Instagram. And, on that account, we'll also have upcoming webinars and virtual events that we'll be hosting. I think Cecilia put it in. Yes, so at Uni Studies. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you again to the panelists. And if you are interested in joining the Unis Buddies family, I look forward to welcoming you to our family very soon.
Thank you so much for
Thank
having
you.
us. If anybody wants to join We Are Brave Together, membership is free. We put on support groups and retreats, and we have the book and the podcast. All the things are there on our website. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Thank you for being part of this community and inviting us in.
Have a good night, everybody.